Welcome to our deep dive on Trevor Noah. I just finished listening to that interview of him on the Diary of a CEO YouTube channel, and wow, it was good.
It really was. He's got such a unique perspective on things,
Yeah.
especially considering his background.
Yeah, his childhood in South Africa during apartheid. Like, for anyone who's not familiar, he was born to a black mother and a white father when interracial relationships were illegal.
Imagine being born into a world where your very existence is considered a crime. It's hard to even fathom.
It's mind-blowing. And he actually jokes about that in the interview, saying that being born a crime gave him a head start in comedy.
Which, is kind of a dark humor way to deal with a
Right.
really heavy situation.
Totally. And he actually shares the story about his mother having to disguise herself as a maid when they were out in public together so they wouldn't be caught, just to protect him.
That's a powerful image, isn't it? The lengths people had to go to just to exist to protect their families.
Absolutely. It speaks volumes about the constant fear and tension they lived with. But, I think that experience of being born into this kind of liminal space, not fully belonging to one racial group or the other, really shaped his worldview.
For sure. That feeling of being an outsider, of not quite fitting in, it's a recurring theme throughout his life.
And it makes you wonder how much that influenced his comedy, right? Like that
Yes.
need to connect with people, to find common ground through humor.
Yeah, the yearning for connection is definitely a thread that runs through his whole story. And speaking of connections, I think it's important to talk about his family life, too, because it wasn't always easy.
No, it wasn't. His mother's relationship with his stepfather, Abel, was really difficult. A lot of domestic violence.
It's hard to even hear him talk about it. Witnessing that as a child, the constant fear and uncertainty, must have been so traumatic.
It was. And he talks about how it made him hyper aware of his surroundings, always trying to anticipate and diffuse any tension, almost like a survival instinct.
Like he had to develop these coping mechanisms just to feel safe in his own home.
Exactly. And then there's the incident where Abel actually shot Noah's mother in the head.
It's chilling.
Hmm.
He describes that phone call, the moment he realized what had happened. And the fact that his mother survived is truly a miracle.
It is. The bullet missed all the vital parts of her brain. But the psychological scars for both of them are still there.
Absolutely. We talk about resilience a lot, but I think we often overlook the complexities of healing from trauma.
Totally. It's not a simple process. It's not like you just bounce back and everything's fine. And Noah's really open about that. He talks about the anger, the desire for revenge, the struggle to forgive.
And it's interesting because even though he's clearly still processing that trauma, there's also this sense of empathy in the way he talks about his stepfather. Like he's trying to understand the complexities of his character, the factors that might have contributed to his actions.
Which is not to excuse the abuse, but it shows a nuanced understanding of forgiveness, right? It's not about condoning what happened, but about finding a way to move forward without being consumed by bitterness.
It's a powerful lesson, I think, for all of us, even those who haven't experienced that level of trauma, because it reminds us that people are complicated and healing takes time.
It does. And I think for Noah, comedy became a part of that healing process, a way to process his experiences and connect with others through shared laughter.
His early life, both with apartheid and domestic violence, seems to have given him this unique blend of humor and social commentary that's so compelling.
Right, there's this sharpness to his observations, this willingness to address tough issues, but always with a touch of wit and empathy. It's what makes him so engaging to watch.
And that's something I'm interested in, how those experiences shaped his comedic voice.
For sure, because you can see how it paved the way for his success later on, like his decision to move to America, to take his comedy to a bigger stage. That was a huge leap of faith.
Definitely. It speaks to his ambition and his belief in himself.
Yeah.
But even with that leap, he still faced challenges.
Yeah, and not just any challenges. I mean, imagine getting chosen to replace Jon Stewart on The Daily Show. The pressure must have been immense.
And not to mention the backlash. Like, people were comparing him to Jon Stewart from day one. Some were just resistant to change, and some were even downright racist.
It was brutal. And,
Yeah.
it would have been understandable if he'd just walked away, faced with all that negativity. Who could blame him? But he didn't. He persevered.
He talks about wanting to quit, actually. But thankfully, he had people around him, colleagues who encouraged him, who reminded him to focus on the work itself rather than the noise outside.
It's a good reminder that we all need that kind of support system, right? People
Yeah.
who believe in us, who help us stay grounded when things get tough.
Absolutely, they can make all the difference.
They can. And in Noah's case, that support, along with his own determination, helped him not just survive, but thrive. The Daily Show, under his leadership, became this cultural touchstone, tackling tough issues with humor and intelligence.
It's amazing how he turned that initial negativity into something truly remarkable. But what's interesting is that even with all this success, he's incredibly candid about the downsides of fame.
Yes. Like he talks about the loneliness, the pressure, the way it can distort your relationships. There's this anecdote he shares about going to a theme park with friends and getting the VIP treatment. No lines, unlimited rides.
Sounds pretty sweet, right?
Yeah, you'd think so. But he actually says it ruined the experience for them because they missed out on the simple joy of just hanging out, waiting in line together, talking and laughing.
Wow, that's a powerful insight. It's like, sometimes the things we think we want, the external markers of success, can actually detract from what truly matters.
Exactly. And it brings us to a really crucial part of Noah's story, his appreciation for friendship, which seems to have been shaped by his early experiences and reinforced by the challenges of his career.
It makes you wonder if that early sense of not belonging, of being an outsider, made him value those close connections even more.
Possibly. And his mother's advice about choosing your company wisely, surrounding yourself with people who inspire you, that definitely stuck with him.
And his definition of a good friend is someone who encourages your growth, who helps you become the best version of yourself. It's about mutual support and inspiration.
Which is beautiful. And you can see how those values play out in his life decisions, like his choice to eventually leave The Daily Show to focus on those personal connections and explore new passions.
It takes guts to walk away from something so successful, but it shows he's not afraid to prioritize what truly matters to him. Which is a great segue into the next part of his story, his struggles with mental health and his ADHD diagnosis.
That's a whole other layer to his story that I'm really curious to unpack. But first, I think we need a break.
Okay, so we were just talking about Trevor Noah's decision to leave The Daily Show and how it reflects his commitment to prioritizing what truly matters to him. And that brings us to a really fascinating part of his story, his struggles with mental health, specifically his depression and ADHD diagnosis.
It's amazing how open he is about it. In the interview, he talks about struggling with depression for years before realizing it was linked to his ADHD, which is a connection a lot of people might not even be aware of.
Right, it's not as widely understood as it should be. But the way he describes it, you can see how ADHD can contribute to those feelings of depression. Like he talks about this constant bombardment of thoughts, the inability to focus, the feeling of being overwhelmed.
And it makes you wonder how much those ADHD symptoms were amplified by the pressure of his job, being in the public eye, having to be on all the time.
Absolutely. That constant scrutiny, the pressure to perform, it can definitely take a toll. And I think it's important to remember that even someone as successful as Trevor Noah can struggle with these things.
Totally. It's a good reminder that mental health challenges don't discriminate. And his willingness to talk about it so openly is so important because it helps to destigmatize these conversations.
It does. It makes it okay for others to come forward and say, hey, I'm struggling too.
Yeah.
And it also highlights the fact that there are different paths to healing, different ways to manage these conditions.
Right. Like he talks about how he chose to manage his ADHD through self-awareness and coping mechanisms rather than medication. Which is not to say that medication isn't a valid option for some people, but it shows that there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for you, whether it's therapy, medication, lifestyle changes, or a combination of things.
Yeah.
And the first step is being aware of what's going on, recognizing those signs and symptoms.
And not being afraid to seek help when you need it, which can be tough because there's still so much stigma around mental health. But the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it, the easier it becomes to reach out for support.
Absolutely. It's like breaking down those barriers, one conversation at a time. And Noah's story is a powerful reminder that we're not alone in these struggles.
So true. And speaking of stories, one of the things that really stuck with me from the interview is his pencil test analogy.
Ah, yes. The idea that we can't erase the hardships from our past, but we can choose how we integrate them into our story, how we move forward.
It's such a beautiful way to think about it. Like, we're not defined by our past. We have the power to choose the narrative we want to create.
And that choice, that act of choosing, is where our true power lies.
It's empowering, isn't it? Because it means we're not just victims of circumstance. We have agency. We can make choices that shape our future.
And sometimes those choices involve walking away from things that no longer serve us, even if they look successful from the outside.
Like his decision to leave The Daily Show, it was a bold move, but it was about prioritizing his own well-being, his own growth.
And it reminds us that success isn't a one-size-fits-all concept. It's about defining what truly matters to you and making choices that align with those values.
Absolutely. Which brings us to another important theme in Noah's story, his deep appreciation for friendship.
He talks about how his mother always told him to choose his company wisely, to surround himself with people who inspire him.
And his definition of a good friend is someone who encourages your growth, who supports your dreams, and who helps you become the best version of yourself.
It's a beautiful definition.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about the importance of those genuine connections, those relationships that nourish our souls.
And it's interesting how he contrasts that with the way society often puts romantic relationships on a pedestal, as if they're the only kind of relationship that truly matters.
It's true. We're often conditioned to believe that romantic love is the ultimate goal, but friendships can be just as fulfilling and life-sustaining.
They provide a different kind of intimacy, a different kind of support. And he even points out that studies have shown that people with strong friendships tend to have better romantic relationships as well.
It makes sense, right? Like having that solid foundation of support from friends can make you a more secure and well-rounded partner.
Exactly. It's like having this built-in support system, this network of people who know and love you, who you can turn to for advice and encouragement.
And that sense of belonging, that feeling of being connected to something bigger than yourself, it's so essential for our well-being.
It is, and you can see how that need for connection has been a driving force throughout Noah's life. From his childhood experiences with apartheid to the challenges of fame, he's always sought out those genuine, meaningful relationships.
It's like a thread that weaves its way through his entire story. And it reminds us that we're not meant to go through life alone. We thrive in community, in connection with others.
And speaking of thriving, one of the most striking things about Noah's story is his ability to find humor even in the darkest of times.
It's incredible, isn't it? Like, even when he's talking about really heavy subjects like apartheid or domestic violence, there's this underlying sense of hope, this ability to find light in the darkness.
It speaks to his resilience, his ability to find meaning, and even laughter in the midst of adversity.
And it's a powerful reminder that we all have that capacity within us.
Right.
We can choose how we respond to challenges. We can choose to find those moments of joy, those glimmers of hope that help us keep going.
And that brings us back to that idea of choosing our story, of taking ownership of our narrative. Because even in the face of adversity, we have the power to decide how we move forward.
And that's a really empowering message, isn't it?
Yeah.
It means we're not just passive bystanders in our own lives. We have agency. We have choices. And those choices, even small ones, can have a ripple effect on our future.
So as we continue to explore Trevor Noah's life and lessons, I think it's worth asking ourselves, what story do we want to write? What choices can we make today that will shape our tomorrow?
It's a powerful question to reflect on. And I think Noah's story gives us the courage to answer it authentically, to embrace our own complexities, and to create a life that feels true to who we are.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to thank you for joining me on this journey. It's been a truly insightful and inspiring conversation.
It has. And I think Noah's story will continue to resonate with us long after this deep dive is over.
You know, it's funny because when you think about it, Trevor Noah's story is like a masterclass in resilience. He faced so many challenges, so much adversity, but he never gave up.
He didn't. He found a way to channel those experiences, to turn them into something positive. And that's a really powerful message for all of us.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what life throws at you, you have the power to choose how you respond.
You do. And it's
Right.
not about pretending that those challenges don't exist or trying to erase them from your memory. It's about acknowledging them, integrating them into your story, and using them as fuel for growth.
Exactly. It's like that Japanese art of kintsugi, where they repair broken pottery with gold, so the cracks become part of the beauty, part of the story.
I love that analogy because it's a reminder that our scars, our imperfections, they don't diminish our worth. They make us who we are.
They do. And they can even become sources of strength, sources of wisdom.
And, you know, I think that's one of the things that makes Trevor Noah so relatable. Even though he's achieved this incredible level of success, he's still so grounded, so human. He doesn't shy away from talking about his vulnerabilities, his struggles, and that makes him even more inspiring.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it shows us that it's okay to not be perfect, to not have all the answers. It's okay to stumble, to fall, to pick yourself back up and keep going.
And it's okay to ask for help when you need it, which is something he talks about as well, the importance of having a support system, people you can rely on.
It's so crucial, especially when you're facing challenges.
Yeah.
Having those people who believe in you, who encourage you, who remind you of your worth, it can make all the difference.
It can, and I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from Noah's story. The power of connection, the importance of surrounding yourself with people who lift you up, who inspire you, who make you want to be a better version of yourself.
And it's not just about having people around you. It's about being that kind of person for others. being a source of support, a source of encouragement, creating those reciprocal relationships where everyone benefits.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, it's those connections, those relationships that give our lives meaning and purpose.
They do. They sustain us, they challenge us, they help us grow,
Yeah.
and they remind us that we're not alone in this journey.
And as we wrap up this deep dive on Trevor Noah, I want to leave you with one final thought. Remember that you have the power to choose your story. You can choose to focus on the positive, to learn from your mistakes, to surround yourself with love and support. You can choose to create a life that feels authentic and fulfilling.
What a beautiful message.
Yeah.
And I think it's the perfect way to end this conversation. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.